Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the third installment, I believe, of this album swap
Yeah.
series. I'm joined here by my buddy Brian from Massey's Main Entertainment, who's graciously agreed to kind of co-host this and be drug along on this kind of experiment of whatever you want to call it. I don't know if it's a great magnitude or if it's going to fizzle out on us, but I've enjoyed this so far. Again, kind of trying to expand my channel a little bit with some different content, maybe pull in some more collaborations. So again, Brian, welcome as always, my friend.
Not a problem. You said the check was in the mail, right, Sam? I mean,
It is, but you're way up there in Maine. I don't know if y'all take
right,
3 stamps, 4 stamps, or you're almost
right.
in Canada. So
Yeah.
anyway,
sled dogs will bring it by any day now.
right, that's right. The dogs,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll have Doc come and knock on your door. But we have a couple of very different albums this week that we, talked about at the end of our last video, which has been a couple weeks ago, probably closer to 3 weeks ago now. But I have given Brian the debut by one of my favorite newer bands, even though they've been around for 20 something years. I gave Brian the debut by The Devil Makes Three, kind of a Americana folk punk-ish kind of band. And Brian gave me the 1982 debut by Donald Fagen, The Night Fly. Obviously, Fagen, the voice and one of the two main creative directors of Steely Dan. That was kind of when they were on a hiatus for a good bit. So very interesting types of music here, with both being from two different wheelhouses. So Brian, I'll go ahead and let you take the first crack here at Devil Makes Three.
Oh, sure. I got to tell you, I'm going to be honest. It took me more than what I regularly do to kind of vibe with this album. The first time I listened, I just wasn't feeling it at all. Because one, I guess I was trying to adjust to the fact that there's no percussion other than when they're slapping on the stand-up bass. That's really where they're getting their time signature from. So typically it's just a standard 4/4, 2/2 time signature for a lot of the stuff. So it took a little getting used to for that. And I was like, wow, I said, why isn't this album vibing with me quite a bit, And it's like I thought, I was like, what I really just need to do is like I had turned off like everything in the house that could be a distraction.
Wow.
And just laid on the bed and listened to the album, so that there would be no other stimuli that was kind of distracting. And the album grew on me a lot more that way. It took a little bit for it to kind of vibe with me. What I think, a lot of people really would like about the band is that really it's kind of, believe it or not, it feels like it's closer to punk than it is to folk in a lot of ways. And in terms of song structure and the intensity sometimes. And it's got the storytelling is probably the Americana portion of it, but I thought it was really gritty in some parts. And that rawness, I think probably, in my eyes anyway, kind of pushed it closer to punk rock. And I could feel like elements of, some Tom Waits in there. And then you could get some blues stuff like Mississippi John Hurt. But then you'd also hear stuff like that reminded you of the Pogues or the Violent Femmes, even like the morose stuff, closer to like Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. So you heard like all this types of influences that clearly were like showing up in their music. Even like old timey stuff like probably Doc Watson, Bill Monroe, but guys that I know you definitely are like a big fan of. So I'm pretty sure that you would really like it. Some tracks that stood out to me. Big fan, obviously, of Old Number 7, not just because I love Jack Daniels, because I am a big fan of Jack Daniels. So really, I thought the lyrics were really cool with that, and it's kind of tongue in cheek a little bit. Very minimalistic. I love the banjo in it. Great raw emotions, bluesy. Graveyard, that one was had that little gothic feel to it. It's got this haunting foot stomping going on. Great storytelling in it. Again, that's that stand-up bass that's kind of driving the rhythm with it. So they have a little bit of a twanginess to it. The Plank, that one's kind of interesting in that they use a lot of mixture of dark humor, but they also use a lot of pirate imagery, thus the name Plank. So you get this macabre sense about things, but this one's like really near punk intensity that I kind of thought was cool. Shades I liked. That's a melancholy track. And for the Family, I thought was another one that was closer to punk than anything else. So, and I really enjoyed that one quite a bit. And it also reminded me of Woody Guthrie a little bit. So there's that type of sound to it anyway. So, again, I mean, overall now, I mean, after I've listened to it a few times, I've learned to appreciate like all the elements that they kind of pull from. And it's kind of interesting to see. I mean, I probably would need to go forward and listen to albums that they released afterwards and see how they matured their sound as they went forward. I think that might be an interesting thing to do. Overall, I mean, I don't know if you want me to give you a score now, but overall, I think, considering like when I first started, I wasn't even sure if I was going to give it a 6.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't know whether it was going to vibe with me right now. So right now I've got it at like a 6.75 to a 7.
Okay.
I think it's, it's going to take a little bit more and me being exposed to bands like this, like the Dead South maybe, and these guys. And I think maybe it can grow on me a little bit more, but I liked it. It took a while, but I like it.
Yeah. No, I knew, when I picked the albums the other week that they were kind of out of your wheelhouse. I intentionally picked artists that you probably hadn't heard anything from. So it's cool. They do have a brand new album came out like last month, called Spirits. And that one has a lot of darker themes to it. It's talking about a little bit of maybe some drug abuse, because they've all kind of struggled. Because I think the lead guy, Pete Bernard, and the bass player the banjo player who has the great name Cooper McBean.
Yeah.
That's real tough. He's got tattoos. He's kind of got like Willie Nelson type braids, and his last name is McBean. But they're from like the heavy metal, I think, kind of background, kind of similar to Billy Strings and his kind of look and feel. But they've they don't shy away from their rough living. They had an album called Redemption and Ruin, which was half songs kind of like Party Saturday Night, and then the second half was like old gospel songs. They were all covers, so they were doing Townes Van Zandt songs, Hank Williams songs, some old like traditional hymns. Really, really cool album. They've got some good stuff out there, and they're on the New West record label now, who always pulls out great artists that I really like. Steve Earle is on there, Rodney Crowell, the Wild Feathers, who I love. So I'm glad that you gave it a couple extra listens after that initial kind of hesitation.
Yeah, it's a kind of a culture shock at first. You listen to it, you go, "What is this?" I mean, I don't even understand.
And they're from California, which is even cooler. Santa Cruz.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Very cool. And also the cool thing about this album, it was released in 2002, and then they released a couple of albums, and then they reissued it in 2007, and it kind of got like, that's where it kind of picked up its momentum.
He kind of got a retread on that again. I saw that it was reissued again. Yeah.
Yeah. And because like this CD has 4 extra tracks that are all really good as well, including a couple live tracks. They're all different tracks. But anyway, let me jump into your pick that you chose for me. Well, I chose out of the pool that you gave me. I'm going with Nightfly. Again, I mentioned at the top, 1982 debut album by Don Fagen, who, he's the voice of Steely Dan. That sound that he doesn't say is yacht rock. He hates the term yacht rock.
Yeah.
Just watch the new documentary and
he's a little bit more colorful in his language, but yeah, he doesn't like it.
Yeah, he's not a fan. But it's thrown into that style of kind of soft alternative pop rock in the 70s and into the 80s here. Kind of just doing like the initial research after having listened to it. I didn't really want to do anything beforehand to skew up my opinions of the songs. But it kind of autobiographical, and I even noticed, just listening to it without even doing anything, with research, a lot of stuff related to, the 50s culture when he was growing up as a teenager. It's got themes that relate to the politics of the day, relate to the Red Scare that was going on with the communists. but also, the name of the album itself, The Night Flies, the song is about this kind of late night DJ taking calls from people, and just kind of this neat vibe. The whole album to me felt like, you come home from work, it's getting dark, you're in the city, you're in downtown New York. Even though I've never been to New York, it made me feel like that's kind of the after hours vibe that I like in music. I mean, again, Tom Waits gives that vibe in a lot of his stuff, where it's like you're the one closing down the bar, you and the saloon singer. And obviously, in true Steely Dan, Donald Fagen fashion, the production on it is, it's clean as a whistle.
Yeah.
Also, one of the first really fully digital recordings of a record, which was kind of neat to learn about that. It wasn't analog. So, Fagen and Becker, when he was with Becker, Walter Becker, they were kind of pushing the boundaries of production, of just flawlessness. So, running through some tracks that, I took a couple notes on. My favorite of the whole album is the first song, IGY. Just a great sound. It's a long track, but it doesn't feel long. It's over 6 minutes long. And I mean, the album itself is 9 tracks as it is.
Right.
But I really enjoyed that kind of a, more up tempo kind of feel to it, which I liked. Skipping ahead, I recognized the title immediately of Ruby Baby. I knew that song from Dion and the Belmonts. It's an old Lieber and Stoller tune, but you're listening to it, it doesn't sound like Dion. I think the Drifters covered it too. It doesn't sound like the Drifters. It sounds like Steely Dan, Donald Fagen doing
right. Yeah.
a cover from the early 60s. So I like that a lot too. It was kind of neat because, again, the album, especially on second listen, I really felt the conceptual nature of it. I mean, it's not really written as a concept album in the reviews and everything, but it's 100% a concept album. It follows a vague story. It's literally, Fagen in his, late 30s or so, looking back. Even though the songs might not be about him, it's this idea that he had of the 50s. Maxine, the song, kind of has it. I wrote it's kind of like yacht rock doo-wop because it's kind of like, he's talking about this young love. But again, like, it's he made it modern for that time, and it's got some neat themes to it. New Frontier opens up side B. That's the song that kind of was all over MTV with the music video, which I watched the music video a few times as well. And it's kind of neat showing, the teenagers going into a fallout shelter. And the song is about this new frontier that's going to happen after, we're bombed by Russia, essentially. And, cool, references. He talks about, well, we're going to need provisions. We're going to need plenty of beer. And, he's like, oh, you like music. I heard you like Dave Brubeck. So, we'll need music in the new frontier. I thought that was really neat. And the video, shows like the artwork for Time Out by Dave Brubeck, which is one of my favorite jazz albums. So it's really, really cool that was, very topical, especially in the 50s, and kind of made sense even into the 80s with the Cold War. Again, Nightfly, I mentioned that at the top of this. That's the, that's the most like late night feeling song to me, where I'm imagining this guy in this like dingy basement radio studio taking phone calls at night. It's just really, really cool. Good. What is it called? I can't even read my writing. Goodbye Look is kind of this like, synthy, like Caribbean calypso-y kind of tune with, like the little, like the wood block kind of percussion in the background. He's got like those tight kind of digital harmonies that were making an appearance around this time. He's doing a lot of the singing on the harmonies. And again, most of these session players were playing with Steely Dan as well. A lot of them are some of the Toto guys, and Greg Philomenges playing, all over the record. And then finally, The Walk Between Raindrops. That song, especially listening to it, the most recent time, I was like, that's got a kind of a Van Morrison-y feel to it. It kind of starts with like this, like almost like baseball park organ, like that you would hear before a baseball game. But then it goes into like this like jazzy kind of shuffly beat. It's a quick song. I think it's under 3 minutes long. And it reminded me of Van Morrison in the 80s, which is a great thing for me. I love that. And I guess I should say, I've never ever listened to a full Steely Dan album, other than, I've got a greatest hits, and I was never a big Steely Dan fan. Not because I didn't, like nothing was offensive about it, but I just was kind of, more interested in going like on the rougher edge with like the songwriters and, Tom Petty or people like that. So that full on production was something I was kind of, indifferent to. But after listening to this, a few times and then going back and spot checking it, I really enjoyed it. Definitely more than the first listen. The first listen I listened to it, I was like, yeah, it's kind of what I was expecting. It's Steely Dan without Walter Becker, but going back to it, like even today, I texted my mom, who's a Steely Dan fan. I said, you should look up The Night Fly by Don Fagen, because she probably wouldn't. She's not a deep musical, she doesn't dig deep in music. So I'm like, you've probably just looked up Steely Dan. You should look up Donald Fagen, his first album. So I really did enjoy it a lot more. It's possible. I think out of the three now, this is my favorite of the three that I've listened to from you. And right now, I would probably give it a 7. Again, it's still like that smooth production that I need to like try a little bit more. I mean, even like some Doobie Brothers stuff and things like that. I'm kind of like, like I'm not ready for that yet. But I really did enjoy it. It's definitely a moody album, but it's also it's fun. It's got that sound that made Steely Dan so great for their time. And yeah, I mean, it's perfect production on it. I mean, you can't say anything about that. So yeah, right now I'll give it a 7, but it's one. Yeah, if I see it in a record store, I'd pick it up.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah.
That was an album that surprised me too, because I was like, I was a Steely Dan fan of their music, but the more that I read about them as musicians, I was like, man, I don't know if I could I don't know if you could hang out with people like that were just so picky. Like it would just drive you nuts that they nitpick everything. I was like, I don't know, a solo album by one of those guys, and I'm like, it was good though. I mean, and for some reason, it still fit in the 80s. As weird as the early 80s was, it still fit. It was fine.
It does. It does. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's kind of like some of the early production on some of those early Michael Jackson albums. I mean, again, Greg Philomanges, he's all over those too. So,
right. Oh yeah. Toto made a living off of Thriller. I mean, it's like
yeah. So, but no, that's cool. I'm glad that you kind of pressed on with mine with Devil Makes 3, and this might make me dip my toe into Steely Dan. Who knows? So
Rich would be happy then.
Yeah, I appreciate the suggestion. So again, now is the fun part, the stressful part, whatever you want to call it, where we show a few albums that we've picked for the other guy, maybe give like a brief synopsis of kind of what we're to expect, and pick our album for next time. So Brian, what do you have?
I guess I'm really gonna see how far I can push you a little bit.
Okay.
So I think I'm going to give you a choice between. I mean, there's one in here that it's a safe choice, I guess I would call it. I've got Sting, Dreams of the Blue Turtles, Dream of the Blue Turtles, solo project of his from the later 80s. And I've got Radiohead, The Bends.
Okay.
Which is their most accessible album, I think, for someone who doesn't listen to them a lot. And then I picked Joe Strummer and the Mescaleros, Streetcore.
Okay.
All of them very different from each other. So I thought, well, let's see what we can do there.
Yeah, I know the song "Love Is the Seventh Wave." That's the only one that comes to mind with "Dream of the Blue Turtles."
Mm-hmm.
I have OK Computer, but I've never listened to it. It was given
Wow.
to me. And I've heard things. I know Larry Graves, I think for a time, got into Joe Strummer and the Mescaleros and was kind of raving about it. So I kind of want to go with something that, I mean, Sting, I know what I would get into.
Right, exactly.
I know what I would get into because I have Sting stuff. Let me do Radiohead because there's somebody that everybody loves to talk about and rave about. And, you know, the couple of songs that I've heard, I've always been like, yeah, I don't know. It's alternative 90s stuff. So I'll try it. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, I listen to Charlie XCX, so you know, good grief.
Right, exactly. If you can get through that, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Honestly, now that I think back on that album, I don't even think I can name a track off of that album. I don't think I've definitely not listened to it since we reviewed it.
No, I can't say it's in my Amazon cart. All right, I picked 4, but I think I'm only going to show, now that I know that that's the pick that I'm going with, I'm only going to show you 3. Because 1 would also be kind of a safe choice, I think, for you. So the first one I'm going to go with is one that I'm not even all that familiar with. I've listened to it a few times. Actually, Steve, formerly of All the World's a Stage, gifted me this just kind of on a whim, and it's First Aid Kit. Do you know First Aid Kit?
I've heard of them.
Okay.
Is it like isn't it all female band? Is it all female band?
It's two sisters. Yeah.
Okay.
They're from Sweden, but they pull influences from, you know, Linda Ronstadt, and they're kind of in that kind of cosmic-y country vein, but you know, they're from Sweden, so they don't have the twang.
Right.
And but it's really an interesting album. This is called Palomino, like the horse.
Okay.
So it's not their first one. I think it might be their third, but it's only one that I've listened to 2 or 3 times myself. So yeah, little female vocals for you there. The next one is a group that I've really gotten into as in like the last 2 weeks, and they're called Chime School.
Chime School.
And it's a long title. It's called The Boy Who Ran the Paisley Hotel. And it just came out last year on Slumberland Records. And it is kind of takes jangle pop with some like 80s indie, like Cure kind of stuff, early REM. They've only got 2 full-length albums. This is their second, and I'm probably going to do a video on them actually fairly soon. So, The Boy Who Ran the Paisley Hotel is number 2, and then here's one that I talk about all the time, but I'm not sure if you ever listened to it or not. Marty Stewart, Way Out West. This is the album that was recorded with Mike Campbell at the production helm from the Heartbreakers. Again, kind of like a psychedelic country Tom Petty-ish kind of album. One of my favorite.
Wow.
Yeah.
How and when did that come out?
This is 2017. It was Mike Campbell produced it just before Petty passed away, and Campbell is on this on some, you know, very background instrumentation. So like you wouldn't know he's on here, but he is on here. But I
think I'm going to go with Chime School, though. I want to try that out.
Okay.
It seems interesting.
Yeah, it's very I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan, obviously, of jangle pop. I mean, REM, and
you're an REM guy.
A lot of Canal Diary and all those bands, and yeah.
And what's interesting about them is like there's not a lot of information about them online, so it's, you know, you're kind of going into it. You know, there's a little bit of information, but not a deep history.
Right.
So very independent. So there we go. We have Radiohead, The Bends, and then Chime School, The Boy Who Ran the Paisley Hotel. Make sure I get that right. So, whenever that video will probably be up again in a couple of weeks, and we will, in the meantime, dig into both of these. So for Brian, for the album swap series. Thank you all for watching and for commenting so far. Please comment what you think. We'd love to talk to you. And yeah, we'll see y'all on the next one. Bye now.